because sometimes people like to go back, and I'm going to light the chalice. Which signifies our time of being together. And the opening reading is by Mary Oliver. It's a poem called Mindful. Every day I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It is what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to instruct myself over and over in joy and acclamation. Nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, the very extravagant, but of the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. Oh, good scholar, I say to myself, how can you help but grow wise with such teachings as these? The untrimmable light of the world, the ocean's shine, the prayers that are made out of grass. So this morning, I thought we would just talk about the parts of the church that bring us joy, the daily stuff, the big stuff, the exciting stuff, the drab stuff. What is it that you totally love about this church, and what moments stand out for you? So if you'd like to talk, I have too many things on my screen at the moment, so whoops. And Anita is coming back. If you'd like to talk, if you can raise your hand this way, or in the chat, or under participants, there's a way of raising your hand. Some of you know how to do it. Dan and Sandy, go ahead. What, you need to unmute first.
Okay, try again. Some of my good memories go back into the 70s and early 80s, when every year we did a Gilbert and Sullivan operetta. And Gilbert and Sullivan was always one of my favorite musics. And I wasn't much of a singer, but they let me sing in the chorus because men were scarce. And so we did all the Gilbert and Sullivan ones, and then we did a
reviews.
we did a Richard Rodgers sections, some from Richard Rodgers, especially Oklahoma and
well, that was a
Oklahoma and South Pacific.
That was a Careful Dreamer when we made up the thing all entirely illegal, but it was written through the church.
Yeah. Anyway, so I joined in there, and this other woman came in to sing. She wasn't from the church, but she came in to sing, and we're both sort of tall, so they put us together. And after the show was over, which the show went really well, after the show was over, I asked her for a date. And we've been together ever since.
We went out for breakfast, actually. It was like 11 o'clock after the show. So we went across the street to their little diner and had our breakfast, and then went back to the car, to our separate cars. But I sat in his car, and I made the mistake of saying, "What is a Unitarian anyway?" And about 3 a.m, he said, "I have to leave because I have to go sailing in the morning." And that's when, from there on, we've been together.
Aw. Can I ask you a question? Did you do Gilbert and Sullivan because of Joyce Gilbert and Fran Sullivan, or did I make that up?
I think you made that up. The uh, the wife of the minister, Joyce
Gilbert.
Joyce Gilbert, was very interested in Gilbert and Sullivan, and she was very active in leading that. And we did it every year for about 10 or 12 years. We did all of their shows, and it was very popular. Now, you remember back in those days, there were only 4 TV channels. There was no internet. There were no home computers. And so going out and performing in shows was a very popular thing to do. And we'd do 3 shows each year, and we'd be pretty much sold out for all 3 shows each year. We're raising money for the church, and it was a very popular thing to do.
It was. And even better that you met your spouse there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great memory. Thank you. Richard and Vicki.
I was a member of the art committee, the gallery committee, for a long time. And the gallery is a special place. Not many churches have a gallery. And we were able to do a whole lot of different things over the years at the gallery. Brought in people from the community who wouldn't otherwise come to our church. And sometimes they find out about who Unitarians are when they come there. And for many people, the creative experience is also a spiritual experience. So I think we've been able to encourage some people who might not otherwise express themselves in that way and show their work. I can remember when, some of you may remember Jerry Navratil, and we did the first show of Jerry Navratil's work, and I got a wonderful letter from her expressing how grateful she was for the opportunity to do that. We did a retrospective of Betty Evans' work that I think was an important thing to do. Every couple of years, we do the show with our school partnership. So the kids have a show at the church, and we have a reception, we invite their parents, their brothers and sisters, the volunteers at the schools to come in and all get together. I think that's an important thing to do. And the art gallery can also be a form of activism. So we've had shows, photo show of migrant workers, a show of artwork by inmates at Auburn Correctional Facility. Way back in the 90s, we had an exhibit of AIDS education posters from around the world. Art can be a form of activism, and I'm glad that we have a gallery where that kind of thing can go on. So that's one of my favorite places at the church.
Yeah. And we call it the Williams Gallery because it is a gallery. We don't always.
And was built for that when the addition was.
Yeah. Jack and Sandy, and then Ruth after them. Okay. Sandy, unmute yourself or let Jack do it.
Good thought. We started with kids in church school who were 3, I think, or maybe 2 and 4. And I remember Allison Wilder was a teacher for our son. And they went all through church school, through the high school group. And I remember our daughter, after I think she was in her first year at UR, and she was teaching Sunday school. And she had a young child in her class who was in a wheelchair. And I remember her getting up in front of church and lecturing the congregation as to when we were going to make things handicapped accessible. And we were so proud of her. But what I really enjoyed last week about the youth service. And if any of you haven't seen it, please go to YouTube and listen to it. It just made me so proud of the kids and made me think the church is in good hands with those kids coming along, and they may not be at our church, they may be at other churches, but they will have our values that they've learned through our church. And it just that with the fact that we have the 22 program, but I'm sure somebody else will talk about that, which we did for a lot of years. But that's one of my good memories of the church.
Can I stick in a small memory? At the start, would have been 1966, before most of you were born. And that summer we came to the church and got shanghaied into teaching. And so we never went to church for a long time. We'd just go upstairs and teach, we think. But we were new. We had these little 2- and 4-year-olds. And the first time we came in, we had one service back then. And we came in, and as we walked by the sanctuary, we looked through the glass and saw a floral arrangement up in front. And we said, well, let's take a look. And we took the kids' hands and walked into the sanctuary, which was dark, some light coming in, and to see the floral arrangement. And it was empty, but for one individual. And sitting on the right side by the door was this little man. And we never understood why what happened, but at the sight of this guy, I think he looked like Santa Claus, maybe, to a child. And so our 4-year-old and 2-year-old ran over to him and crawled up into his lap. And that was David Reese Williams. That's how we got to know. And after that, we have no idea what they talked about with him. And after that, every Sunday, we'd come in, Sandy and I would go to see the floral arrangement up front, and the kids would run and crawl up in the lap of their friend. And that's how I remember David Reese Williams. And I look at the portrait in the gallery and smile.
Thank you. Ruth, you had your hand up, and then Emily and Colleen are next after Ruth, okay?
Yes, I wanted to say that the Soul Matters experience has been probably one of the most wonderful things for me at church. We started our Soul Matters group right out of Starting Point, which I don't know if they do it that way anymore, but we've been together for 10 years. And it's been a wonderful way to make very dear and close friends in the context of a very large church. And so I think offering that and providing that opportunity for new people and then old people as well has been really a highlight. And then the other I just wanted to say is the choir. I love the choir, and I miss the services online have been good, but without the choir, it's never the same. So to all of you who are in the choir, much gratitude, and I can't wait until we get back to hear you sing, because that is the best part of the service for me.
Emily and Colleen.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, one of the things that impressed me, one particular thing in the church building that impressed me and has had meaning that continues, and that is the part along the wall in the lounge where we commemorate those who have died. And we're able to leave something ourselves that we would like to have people know about us later on. And for those of us who, or most of us, who move around through the years, don't have one hometown that you're staying all your life, to have a place after you're gone that will always be there, that can speak for you, is so meaningful. And I know that people who have come into the church that I've had, and never been in before or on, are just, this is so special, you know, and what this means. So that is the one particular thing that is so different in our church that I have always had as very meaningful. And I have in a few words that I would like to read. It's my quote for this year that we leave behind us now.
Okay.
It is from Emily Dickinson, and it is called, "After great pain, a formal feeling comes. This is the hour of lead. For us, this is the year of lead, remembered, if outlived, as freezing persons recollect the snow. First, chill, then stupor, then the letting go." Emily Dickinson.
Thank you, Colleen.
Our year past.
Yeah.
Glenn, you've got your hand up. And then Betsy, you'll be after Glenn.
Well, Emily wants to get a word
well,
in.
that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Mine is real quick. One of my favorite parts of the church and memories is the kitchen. I first had my first moments in the kitchen when I foolishly volunteered to cook chili dinner for 75 people and ended up doing it by myself. At that point, I fell in love with the kitchen. Just the way that it was run out, the ease of use, the big stove, the way that things were. And for many years, that kitchen was my ideal kitchen. Now, of course, time has gone on and that kitchen is no longer as cutting edge as it was back in '73. But that kitchen will always hold a strong place. It's a gathering place, and it's just a neat, whoever designed that kitchen and whatever, I applaud them. I'm done.
Okay, Glenn.
Well, not surprisingly, probably to a lot of you, my all-time favorite memory is the great organ transplant. And just to refresh some of your memories, and maybe something new to some of your newer folks, is that back in 1981, we had the opportunity to purchase the pipe organ from St. Bernard Seminary. And this was a rather sudden event, so we had to borrow $18,000 from 18 different church members with the intent to pay it back later on through fundraising. So somehow I either volunteered or I got assigned the job of chairing this function to orchestrate a fundraiser. So the work started in May of transporting the organ back, and we worked all through the summer, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays, every Tuesday and Thursday evening from 7 to 10, from May through November. So when church reconvened back in September of 1981, that's when we decided to start the fundraising effort. So I didn't know what to do, but I really wanted to get this done. Oh, got this fundraising over and done quickly. So tried to figure out how best to do it. So I came up with this idea of coming up with a wedding style invitation that we would send to every church member. And included in the invitation would be, and I'll quote it to you in a minute, would be the invitation to send money to the church for the pipe organ. It would have a return envelope, self-addressed, stamped return envelope. My three objectives were, because we wanted to get this out quickly and get it over with quickly, my three objectives were to, when we send the invitation out, first of all, you gotta get people to open the envelope. Secondly, you want them to read the contents. And thirdly, you want them to respond quickly. So in order to do this, I asked, some of you people may remember these people, Diane Wellstead, Barbara Ward, Doris Wright, and there may have been another woman involved, but their talents at that time was that they could do calligraphy. So I asked them to address these envelopes, these wedding style envelopes, to every congregant in calligraphy. That's to get their attention when the mail arrives at their house. Secondly, and they did, it was a very difficult, time-consuming job. I think we convened in room 110 and we brought in lunch or something, and they spent pretty much the whole day addressing these envelopes. So inside the envelope, as I mentioned, was this invitation, and I'll quote it to you. I made a copy of it. It says, "The First Unitarian Church of Rochester, New York is pleased to announce the installation of a classically voiced Wix pipe organ. Music from this fine instrument will enhance the spiritual inspiration and warmth of our fellowship now and for future generations. You are invited to share in this occasion by sending a financial contribution. Your response by October 28, 1981 will be appreciated." So sure enough, people read the invitation and people responded almost immediately. I think we raised $25,000 within 3 weeks.
Wow.
Part of that was that every Sunday I get up and that's when we could have members make announcements during the church service.
Yeah.
So I would get up and make announcements referring to this invitation, etc. So the response was terrific. We got obviously $7,000 more than we needed, but we needed to pay for the Parsons pipe organ to tune and recalibrate the organ, etc. So that was very satisfying and a lot of fun. And I've never experienced such a powerful all church experience like that one was. It was like a spiritual moment to me.
Yeah.
And as a sidebar, similar to Sandy and Dan, as a sidebar to that experience, so Dorothy Hammett and Brad Casibo, who were former members, they worked every Tuesday and Thursday night also, and they were a young single people in the church. Well, they ended up getting engaged and they're still married. They live somewhere south of here, but they're still in touch with some members of the church. Fond memory to me and to many people. Thank you.
It was a memorable moment, that was. I have to mention that there is a little chat about Emily's mentioning the kitchen. Dave Friedman says, when Linda first saw the kitchen at church, she said, male architect. And Anne Perry's response is, a male architect who is told to design a catering kitchen. You can still only feed 75 people a full meal from there. And she should know, obviously. But she adds, I've had many happy hours there. And we have had many happy hours eating the benefits of your food, Anne. Betsy has her hand up, and then somebody was waving at Dave Friedman after Betsy. Okay. Go ahead, Betsy.
Hi, thank you. So I have not more than just one memory, of course, as I'm sure we all do, but two things come to mind, especially when I think of church besides these lovely gatherings. One is the RE program that my son went through, and that was especially meaningful to me. I found myself a single parent, and I so appreciated the perspective of other adults and the larger community in helping to raise my son. And two years especially stand out. One was called Neighboring Faiths, and the kids were maybe in the junior high level, and the kids would visit other churches and religious institutions in the region. And sometimes the parents got to go with them, which we did a few times. I did a few times. And we visited the Zen Center, visited a monastery. We visited, I think, an Episcopal church, and it was so interesting for me, certainly, but also I think my son really did get a lot out of it, and that stayed with him. And then, of course, there was the OWL program, which was just great, and it really cut through a lot of challenging discussions that my son and I might otherwise have. And I know he got a lot out of that. So I was always very appreciative of everything that went into that program. The other thing that comes to mind, of course, are the rummage sales. And I know Sandy is on here. Yeah, hi, Sandy. And that was always a lot of fun for me to participate in. Initially, in the earlier years as a member for me, when my schedule was really crammed and I worked long hours, it was the perfect kind of volunteer activity where you could just sort of dive in for a few days, once a year. It didn't require a lot of commitment. And then later, Sandy was kind enough to ask me to help join her and help to make the thing happen every year. And I got to know a lot of you folk through the sale, or get to know you better at least. And the sale always spoke to the recycling and reuse initiatives that were always very important to me and remain so. We haven't had that sale for a few years. Sandy and I had a lot of discussions about what it would take to continue and was it worth the effort, et cetera. And I have to say, this last year, as I bet a lot of us have been spending a lot of time at home and going through our closets and drawers, and I've been wondering, should we somehow try to reinitiate that sale? I wonder if we have a lot of stuff just waiting to go out to the curb. That's a discussion for a later time, but those rummage sales were always so much fun. A little hard on the feet, but a lot of fun. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Betsy. I miss the rummage. I never did volunteer at them, but I loved being able to bring stuff to them. Yeah. Dave, before we get to you, there's a note in the chat from Paul Miner, who is also an architect, and says, a male architect, and says, as an architect, I've had experience designing kitchens by committee. We try to keep them looking like camels. Dave Friedman, go ahead.
Well, a different experience than Glenn. My worst memory is the night of the Great Organ Transplant, both because that was the night of Linda's car accident, and also I managed to rupture a liver abscess up through my diaphragm while on a ladder at St. Bernard. So that wasn't our best. On the positive side, my mind jumps between my daughter's ordination at the church minister, which was a big deal, and the other would be the committee, the four of us, three who are on this call, forming the Gilbert Spirit Fund project, where we thought we could raise maybe $75,000 to honor Dick and Joyce's service, and we managed to bring in $155,000. And several people on this call were quite instrumental in helping design that project. That was something that felt very good.
Howie, I just want to mention in the chat, Laura Humphrey says, please do have the rummage sale again. I have a pile. So thank you, Laura. Think about it. Okay, Howie, go ahead. And Mary, which I'm not sure which.
Libby, this is Annette. Could I say something?
What?
Libby?
Annette?
Yes, can I say something?
Yeah, Howie is before you, and then I'll
Okay.
call on you, okay?
Well, in my relatively short time with the church, the thing that came to mind when you asked the question, Libby, was the experience of being at the church at night during the rain weeks when we were hosting families from the area. And for some reason, I gravitated toward the midnight shift, and being there by myself, or sometimes there was somebody else, but we were pretty much by ourselves. And the experience of walking around in the building when most everybody else is asleep, checking the doors, see everything's closed. I had a sense of proprietorship of that this was my church. I was responsible. And even though 200 other people were involved in that week at Rain to make it all work, the enormous contributions of people who cooked meals and served meals and changed over the bedding and played with the kids and the families. An amazing logistical accomplishment that demonstrated the goodwill of the members of the church. It was this funny combination of it was this group effort, and yet I was there by myself, and I was kind of in charge of providing safety for the people who were sleeping there. So there was something that touched me emotionally about that I think I will always remember. I hope we'll do it again, but I'll always remember it as a connection I felt to the church and the mission of the church.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, and thank you for remembering Rain. We are definitely supporting them as best we can during this time. So, Annette, go ahead.
Well, there's so many memories. The candlelight dinners, and there was this project with the Catholic Family Center and that Episcopal Church on East Avenue, and our church where we organized helping the refugees from Kosovo. I mean, we met them at the airport, and they stayed at the parsonage there and the Episcopal Church, and so many memories. I worked with them at least, 2 or 3 years. But back to the kitchen, Ann Perry and Joyce Gilbert organized this little group, and we would meet. And I remember we did a Greek dinner, for example. So we got all the recipes for this Greek dinner, and we divided it into little groups, and we could cook together, and then we would invite a friend for lunch. So it was, it was very minimal, maybe $12 or something like that. But it was a real good experience. I really thought it was wonderful.
And I remember candlelight dinners vividly because it was one of the first things I got involved in at church, was organizing who went to whose house. How involved were you with that, Annette? I've lost her. She's muted herself again. Who else would like to say? Irene Burnett is waving at me. Go ahead.
Oh, hi. I was remembering the summer services. We did one year on the hill by the memorial wall. And one of my best friend at the time, Lynn Stevens, and I dressed up as woodland nymphs, and we came dancing through the woods, throwing rose petals while they played "A Summer Is a Comin' In," like a, I love that song. And then afterward, there was a picnic on the hill with everybody in the congregation, and the little girls would come up to us and wanted to see our silk pouches with rose petals. So we let them throw some rose petals. It was really delightful. But also, I've also really loved the gardens all these years, coming in the spring, welcomed by all those daffodils, and the smell of the katsura tree at the entrance in the fall. Smells like sugar cookies. And walking through the gardens and being reminded of people with the memorial trees. Yeah. You know, I just love the Dawnwood, and there's just so many special things about the gardens, and yeah, it's just a spiritual place. And it's nice to see people in there all the time, you know, and families in the spring with little children, just truly enjoying the gardens. So both those memories are good for me.
Yeah, the gardens have really blossomed over the years and just gotten so beautiful and so meaningful.
Well, also, I'm heartbroken that Karen Evans is leaving.
I know.
She is like a force to be reckoned with. She's a part of this church and those gardens, and I know it's good for her and her family for her to be with them, but I'll miss her dearly. I miss her so much.
I know. Patty, did you want to talk? Oh, you're muted.
I was just agreeing with her that Karen is a force to be reckoned with and is such a part of our church. But I will say one thing. Besides the fact that Dick Gilbert married us, we became active because I wanted my daughter to grow up with religious tolerance, being that we live in Brighton and she would be going to school with so many different people. That was a priority for me. And it was joyful when she went through the whole Sunday school and went off to college, and there was a requirement that she take a religious course. And she said, Mom, she called me one day and said, Mom, the professor was amazed that I knew so much about several different of all the religions, probably. And I thought to myself, it came to fruition. That's what I wanted. That was my goal for her. And it came true.
Lovely. Dick and Vicky have their hand up.
Thank you. This is Dick. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned yet is the playground. A number of years ago in the early 80s, the church decided that it would be appropriate to do an all-church event that would help the community. And a couple of us organized a project with the city school district and the town or the city parks to put in a playground, and we would cover the costs of the equipment and the installation. And in fact, we would provide the labor to do that. So it was a very rewarding experience in that the entire church, regardless of age and ability and length of service to the church, to make a contribution to the city of Rochester in a way that I still remember and that I do every once in a while go past school 20, and that playground is still there. So
that was a great project. Yeah. Larry and Cass have their hand up.
Yeah, I we got started back in 1987 and I got off to a good start with the church because for me, I remember that was an interesting little time. Kodak was cutting back and there was something about the church and the philosophy of the church and so on that led to the courage to say, I'm ready to leave Kodak at this particular point. And so for me, there was an inspiring sense of theology or community or philosophy of living life to the fullest and so on that made me feel like, hey, I had the courage to go ahead and make that decision, a tough decision, given 2 weeks to decide whether you want to stay or leave. And then so many ways that the source of community and connection in this church has meant so much to us. We were drawn to the church so much by the music itself in the first place. The choir has always been a very, very important part. It's nice to hear that the choir is valued in the services, that we as singers certainly do value the opportunity to make it and so on. And the opportunity to connect with other photographers in the gallery and that sort of thing. And would say thanks to Irene right now taking charge of the gallery and all that she's doing in that way. I was scheduled to have had a show up during January of this year and had a little reminder still on my calendars reminding me that I was supposed to take down my photographs and all that kind of thing. But even to the thwackers and the golf course and all the rest of that kind of thing and the annual UU Open, so on, all powerful kinds of connections with many, many good friends. And it's a powerful thing, the church.
It is. Ann Teese has her hand up and then Ann Perry after that.
Hi, I have a question for Dick Schwartz, and that is, you were talking about a playground. Now, is that the playground that's out next to the church, or there's that one? Then you said something about it was near School 22, so I wasn't sure where it was.
It was School 20 in the city. I don't think the school is still an active school. And I've forgotten the street. It was north of downtown. I might say Clinton, maybe somebody else knows better than I. But that was the location. And I think it was well documented photographically. If someone has access to the archives, I think there may be quite a few photographs that were taken that day. Actually, it was a weekend, 2 days.
And then is the playground still there? Are people still using it?
Since it's not a school, I don't know how much congregation of children there is. It's not a place that we go past frequently.
Okay, great.
The great thing for the congregation was that everybody in the congregation could participate. So the youth group was there. Lots of kids were there. We have pictures of little, 4-year-olds pushing wheelbarrows around with mulch and, that kind of thing. It was really an all church project.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ann Perry, go ahead. And then Juanita, you can go after Ann.
I wanted to speak to writing Soul Matters packets as a creative outlet. And if anyone's looking for a creative writing outlet, there's room on the team doing that. And I will also make a plug that the packets are put in the newsletter. So even if you're not in the Soul Matters group, you can click on and read the current one. You may find interesting because it's abiding deeply with UU theology. The other thing, I'm one of a handful of, I guess we'd say, governance nerds. I know David Friedman's another, Ron Wilder's been in that category. But I've really enjoyed working on things like revising bylaws, working on governing policies, and working with our board the past few years on really re-implementing policy governance, which has made it much more feasible for people who are working full-time to be on the board. You all know about my cooking stuff. I don't need to talk about it.
Thanks. Juanita, you had your hand up and I've lost you. Oh, there you are. Okay.
I've been lost and now I'm found. Both Ron and I were going to mention the playground also. And for those who don't know, this was a 2-day effort with a bare plot of land. And, you know, some of the construction equipment that had to come in, but for the most part, the congregation was digging holes and the construction part was pouring foundations. And to have gone in 2 days from just a plot of land to build this complete playground that was finished. And by the way, a lot of it was done in the rain. So there was a lot of mud. And as Vicki and Dick said, you know, to see like the really little kids just carrying pails or helping in any way they could. And so many of the generations of the congregation working on this 2-day project. And honestly, it was like a miracle to see it finished. And one day there was nothing. And 2 days later, you went by and it was just an absolutely beautiful playground. I'm not talking about 1 or 2 swings. It was a playground and it was just wonderful. And quickly, I also want to mention, well, it's a memory, but it's long. It still is there, of just coming to the church and feeling the community, and it always being such a very safe place to be, no matter how your week was.
Right.
You come in and it was good.
Picking up on that theme of being safe, 10 days ago was the 30th anniversary of the great Rochester ice storm.
Yes, it was.
And in our neighborhood, for some strange reason, we were out of power for the longest period of time and anybody in the area. And in the house, there was no power whatsoever. So you had hot water and that was it. You could see your breath when you breathed. So one day, our 2 daughters, we were thinking of where can we go? And our 2 daughters said, well, let's go to church. That'll be a safe place. So several nights, my wife and daughters were sleeping in the Susan B. Anthony Lounge in front of the fireplace as I stayed home with the dog to keep her company.
Oh, amazing. You know, we're almost out of time, folks, so we could do this all morning, I think, but I want to mention a couple of things in the chat. One, Kathy says, I think one of the calligraphers might have been sued to catch. And she also says, I hope we have candlelight dinners again. It was such a great way to get to meet new people. Mm-hmm. Betsy Stewart says, Patty, thanks for sharing that wonderful memory of the value of our RE. Dave Friedman says, PS to playground reporting, which was done during Mayor Johnson's term. The mayor preached at both UU churches in town. He was well connected to churches. And Ruth, is it okay if I read what you wrote?
I guess I'm too late.
Ruth says, the other thing that I can't speak but want to share is the highlight of hugs from Will Hayes every week. We reconnected at First U after having worked together at Strong for many years. Finding him again has been a true gift for me. And I've known how much you care about him. Don and Allison have their hand up. And then I'm gonna do my quickly. Go ahead, Allison, you're unmuted.
Okay,
I'm of the opinion that the playground was built at School 17, and that's why we don't see it ordinarily. It's not connected to the church. And I wanted to say that my first impressions with the church that stayed with me for a long time were Bob West's sermons. He had just come back from the South, and the racial uprising and strife, and he preached just riveting. I didn't know where I was, who I was, where we were, but it was great. And Dick Gilbert followed with a lot of sermons of that sort, but not that grabbed me like Bob West. Of course, that was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. So I'm going to tell you briefly my favorite moment, which was when we had the coming home like rivers to the sea. Do you all remember that? And in 1987, Bob stood up and he had ridden his bike across the country and he poured some water into the container that Dick always had. And he said, so I rode my bike across the country, and you may ask why I did such a crazy thing. And it's because Libby said, if I did, she'll marry me. And I did, and she will. And it was so, that was my favorite, I have to say. And the church wrapping around me when he died 4 years ago. And we didn't even talk about Bifry, guys, but there is so much that is so meaningful to all of us. And this tapestry that we pulled together with everybody's memories is so valuable. And tomorrow is the beginning of the annual stewardship drive. So this was not accidental that we were doing our mini testimonials today. That I hope that you make your generous pledge, and that, you know, I've already done mine. I was one of those lucky people who didn't get to do anything I had planned to do this year. Like I was going to go to Santa Fe last April, and I was going to go to Paris in October, and I couldn't. So there's more money to go to the church. And I know that that's not true for everybody, but for those of you who can, please do. Like Bob said, she said I would, or if I did, she would, and I did, and she will. So please, whatever you can do to support this incredible place, we'll appreciate it. I mean, it's for all of us, isn't it? I love you guys. It is such a pleasure to be with you on Saturday morning. And next week we have Jean Weaver will speak. The week after that, Kyle Williams is going to talk, who is on the board of trustees, and it will be an honorary elder. He's pretty young. And the week after that, oh no, wait, the week after is Jean Weaver, then Penny Quill is the March 27th, and Kyle is on April 3rd, and then Steve Jacobstein is the week after that. So we're getting a wonderful lineup for the next month, but I'm still always ready to say yes if somebody wants to talk. I'll put you on the calendar. Have a wonderful weekend in the sunshine. I may see some of you at the vigil at noon. Be well, and I'll see you in church in the morning, okay? Bye.